Hey guys, welcome back to the Beyond Hope Project podcast. My name is Jason Tharp, the champion of hope, and today I'm excited to talk to this guest. I haven't seen Sam for a while. Sam and I met back at shockingly, anybody that's listened to the episodes met Sam at the gym. I know that the gym has become a plethora of content for me. I've kind of dug into all of them. And Sam is a really unique young person. And if you've listened, I love bringing young guests on because I'm inspired by young people that are doing stuff in a different way. And I don't know if that has anything to do with like my whole way I've went about like my medical stuff or whatever. But it's been throughout that journey that I've like really found that's really refreshing to see young people that are like, that have it together. Maybe it's a little jealousy. I wish that I had it together that much when I was that young, but that are doing some really cool stuff. So Sam, thank you so much for coming in here. I appreciate you taking the time out today.
Yeah, this is huge. I mean, I walked in, I didn't know what to expect. I saw the back room there, and I was like, wow, I'm nervous.
Yeah, you're all good. It's all good. There's nothing to be nervous about. And so what we do to give you an idea of what to start this off.
Yeah.
How we define hope's a little different. Okay. I want to give you the definition, and then I have a question to follow up. So cool. We define hope as an impact point. It's a place to begin. We like to show people that there is a path. And then you're going to go down that path, and ultimately something's going to happen, and you're going to feel like you failed.
Yeah.
But really what you did was you just have a new beginning now. Yeah. And what we kind of do is we swoop back in to show you that like, hey, the path is still here. Maybe just moved a little bit.
Yeah.
So with the definition of hope like that, is there any point in your life that you would go back and give yourself that piece of hope? And what would it look like? And can you give us a little context for that?
I think I have like a lot of them. I think the ones that I would like, the one that I would mention is one that I think I come back to like, I wouldn't say daily, but a lot more than like I kind of ruminate on it. And I think it was a point when I went to a boarding school in Boston. So I'm from Columbus, originally grew up in Grove City, went to, the local schools. That was kind of my thing until I was about like, I think 8th grade, freshman. I kind of moved away when I was a sophomore. So I had taken this chance to, have school, and I played hockey. So having the sport and the academic situation all in one. And I found a place, Lawrence Academy, and, the Boston area. Mm-hmm. And I was thinking like, all right, this is good. This seems to be good grounds for me to like build on. And the first year I had playing there was a lot of acclimation, a lot of, getting to know people, being sound academically, plus transferring like, physical activity into like, almost like it was interesting because you have a skill to be like socially aware. You have a skill to be, good in academic settings, like with your mind. And then there's another one where you want to be sound physically and performance. And so sports, on one hand, being separate from academics was like an experience, which I had before. And then tying academics, tying social cohesion with my community, and then also tying in sports in this like, trifecta type of thing, this triangle, it was like a new thing for me. So at first my athletic performance was like not that great my first year. Then the second year I started to get a lot more notice from colleges, like offers and this kind of stuff. And I hadn't converged on anything. No one was like super sure about me yet, but like I had a lot of interest. And we had this tournament, and I had a shoulder surgery the year before, which at that point I just thought was pretty cool. It was like my first shoulder surgery, like getting kind of beat up, but like not like I didn't think anything of it. And then, right when I was gaining all of this sort of momentum per se in the midpoint of that second year, when I was like trying to, I was finding my stride per se, no pun intended. I like went on this, drive, like kind of like trying to cut in, and the defender just kind of made like a last minute, decision to stick his stick out and kind of took my feet out. And I was going too fast where I sort of came up on the wall, and instead of like, I was kind of going in like this. Mm-hmm. So there's so much speed where like, I didn't know how to respond. So instead of going in with my head like this, which I probably could have just turned and went in with my shoulder like this, but I panicked and I like stuck my hand up.
Oh.
And when I stuck my hand up, I re-dislocated and tore all the sutures of the previous surgery out. And, after that happened, I tried to come back and play, and I just kept having chronic dislocations. So that was probably a point where I look back on, and I ran out of hope sort of the summer after, because I came back from that injury, and I was just like, I was not the same in terms of my psychology around the sport.
Yeah.
I doubted myself. I was more scared. I thought if I had one more injury, it would be, it. And so, yeah, that's probably one of the most formative experiences where I'd be like, I wish I had a little bit more, I guess, grace and understanding for that, specific environment that I was putting myself in.
Yeah, thanks for sharing. That's really cool. And so what was interesting about before we started recording, you talked about like how you kind of you have dabbled in a bunch of different things, and I wonder, like, is there any part of that story that taught you that valuable lesson of like there's many paths to kind of get to where you want to go?
Yeah, I think just being in a hard situation, separated from your family at a younger age, and coming into contact with like a physical pain and adversity situation like a surgery, or something that was like physically painful and also mentally painful. I think that led me to come to a conclusion of like, all right, well, how do I make it better?
Mm-hmm.
And so making it better wasn't like a simple thing for me, like, oh, you must rest more. It wasn't like, it wasn't, it wasn't so like simple.
Yeah.
So, and of course I didn't want it to be simple because I wanted to do it right. And whenever you do things right, it seems that you have to do everything right. And there's so many pieces and you gotta be so intricate about it. So I was like, okay, so how do I heal the fastest from this injury? Because it's my second one. I don't want to have another one. So how do I get to that point? And then it's like, well, how does the body heal? And it's like, well, the body heals when it's not inflamed, when it's not scared, when it's not, all these factors.
Right.
So then I went to doing research on nutrition and, okay, how do you limit inflammation, in the body? It's like, well, to heal, I need to do this. And to limit inflammation, I need to cut out this. So then it kind of became like a little like lock and key mechanism of like, I can do this, but not this. I can do this, but not this. And I kind of just started doing research based on a curiosity to heal from an injury so I could get back to a state of performance that was, from my opinion, optimal. And I never got back to that point, but I did have a seed planted during that time, which was this sort of critical analysis, see a problem, find a solution, and be pretty relentless in that process. So it's like, at the point where I started to try to find out how to heal, I pretty much became uninterested in like healing for the reason that I like kind of sought the information for. Yeah. It was just now a skill set that I would pass on to, not just, this specific, thing, but to relationships, to, really anything.
Yeah.
Everything, my perspective completely changed on the world, because to be safe, people want to be safe. Like they want to feel safe. They want to feel seen. They want to be in these environments where they can be dynamic and not judged. And you want to have health, because obviously health is time, and more time you have, the more you can enjoy life and these kind of things. So like you can take it all the way back to like philosophy, but when it comes to the day to day is when I kind of would like I guess just like sharpen the tools by doing some sort of looking into a new thing.
Yeah.
And I found the biohackers early on in like 2015, probably when I was going through this process. Yeah. So like your Ben Greenfields, and there's a whole plethora of these guys, but at that time it was like Ben Greenfield.
Yeah.
I was like, what does he do?
Yeah.
And that was a time when he was like, getting started. But that's kind of like where that started. And then that curiosity for human medicine and healing never really stopped.
Yeah.
And I just found like there's endless questions to be answered in medicine, and I want to know.
Yeah.
So.
Do you think that quote unquote, like that failure of your shoulder.
Yeah.
Isn't it amazing, like how something that we perceive as a failure initially kind of starts that whole journey into something that ultimately, like, you could have went and become a professional hockey player. You could have, like, all those things. And like, do you ever reflect back on like the what ifs, if you could, like, would you have been here? Like,
Yeah.
I think that the reason why I asked that is because there's so many adults, like, I mean, grown-ups like me, right? Old guys like me that sit back and they look back at those times when they were like at your age, like, and we go like, my God, I wish at that young age I had that kind of awareness.
Yeah.
Like, where do you think that comes from? Did you grow up around people that taught you to look for those angles, or what was that spark that made you go like, okay, let's fix this, and I can fix this?
I think it was just being a curious kid. Like, I've been pretty fascinated with this the last couple of years. Like, all my grandparents are gone. You know, like my grandmother's kind of passed early on, and then my grandfather's kind of 10 years or so after. So before they ended up going, and my dad's dad ended up passing away this past February, and I asked him, one of the last conversation I had with him was like, he was in a retirement home and he's kind of half aware sort of thing, like a little dementia, had some strokes, like, neurologically, obviously he wasn't at 100 there. And they kind of just, like, the experience I had with my two grandparents, my grandfather specifically, was that they were put into these super, I would call them like, it's a retirement home.
Yeah.
It's super like, it's just like, it's not a great place.
Right.
Like, there's not a lot of dynamic environment. They're not outside a lot. Like, there's not a lot of stimulation. They kind of just sit there.
It's
and
kind of left.
Just kind of rot there.
Yes, yeah.
And like, neither of my grandparents were, anywhere close to people that just like sat around and like just like watched TV.
Yeah.
They were always like out and about and doing stuff and trying to get involved and going to have coffee with someone or doing something, going out to eat or whatever. So anyway, they would be pretty non-responsive in these environments. So it was like they're kind of a product of their environment. Surprise. And I asked my grandfather, I was like, what do you think of your grandkids? Like a blatant question, because I think when you're younger, you're kind of scared, like what people are going to say.
Yeah.
And I was like, what did you think about all of us? Like, personally, like, what do you think about my brother Ben, me, Sam? He had 5 grandkids. So I was like, how do you rank us?
Yeah.
I was like, just rank us. And he kind of ranked everybody, and he's like, he's probably not going to, I'm worried about him sort of thing, but he's going to be okay. And he's like, I don't know about you, man. You could be like 1, or you could be like 5. You could be 2. And he's like really thinking, like all of a sudden, like all of this, fogginess of his condition and where he was kind of disappeared. And he was just like so clear on like who he knew I was, because he'd watched me growing up for 20, 25 years. And he's like, the one thing that made you different as a kid was that you would always get into stuff. You'd get into like the drawer and take out like the candy and take out the knives, and like you'd look at it. You never really like destruct anything, but you would just like look at it and mess around with it. When I look back on like, it's a fundamental character trait of like, you have unique qualities that you possess best.
Yeah.
And I think it's more reliable to find out what, I have ideas of who I am, but until I really get, honest feedback from a community of people of like who I am and like what they think I am, I don't need to take what they say as fact. Like, okay, yeah, that person said I was X, so I must be X. It's like, you have to kind of include yourself in the community of, specifically maybe people who have raised you, and be like, give me an honest opinion. And it seemed to align with like what I think. And you ask like, was there someone that was, someone that instilled this curiosity in you? And I would probably say no. Like, there wasn't like I think I was more deterred from being curious about stuff than I was encouraged. Mm-hmm. Not in like a deprecating way where I'm like suffocating for creativity as a child. Like, my mother was a school teacher, and she had like incredible ability to be emotionally and cognitively empathetic. Like, she's super good. And I never had a difficult experience. My parents are always very supportive. But I remember one time I was like wanting to be a skateboarder. And I was like, like I was into like BMX and I liked the whole thing. And I was like skateboarding in the front little driveway there. And I told my mom I wanted to be a skateboarder. And she like looked at my neighbor, which was another kind of like woman, probably 10 years older than her. And they kind of grinned at each other and they were like, no, that's probably not a good choice because of the lifestyle. And I was like, lifestyle? And then at the time, like I realized now they're talking about like, being a skater, you might do more drugs or smoke more weed or something like this. And I didn't understand these factors to be important. I was just like, I just think this is cool. Like, why can't I chase this opportunity that I think I'm kind of good at? And they just like kind of categorized it and been like, no, the chances of you succeeding, the injury, the lifestyle, like you can't do that.
Yeah.
So I was always in these areas where I'd push things, get feedback and be like, all right, that's not sustainable for me to push in my environment. So I'll change. But I've always been very interested in finding real solutions to stuff and finding the truth and everything. And it probably gets me into trouble because I just don't converge on ideas like decision making and career opportunities and stuff. Like someone tells me something's like super great or this is how we do performance training in the gym per se. You could ask any of the coaches at Peak, like we would have these Thursday meetings and even things I would say to Alex, he's like, you just need to stick to the plan, man. Like you just need to make sure that like we already have such a diverse perspective of performance at Peak and they're so great at what they do. But I would find something new and I'd be like, this is wrong. Like this has to be wrong. We can't do this anymore. And I would like sneak it in with some clients and then, someone would see it and be like, dude, like, what are you doing? Like that's what you can't, there's not, vetted efficacy for that thing yet. Like you can't just do that. And so, I'm definitely like from a career perspective, if I don't have the ability to push boundaries or to test things where maybe that's research, maybe that's like entrepreneurship, but that's probably like the whole idea behind like how I came to be like what I do.
Yeah. I think we have a lot in common where, I remember, when I came back, it was after brain surgery and all that stuff when I was finally cleared and I kind of came back into the class setting at Peak. I was working with just Alex at that time. And I think you were like one of the coaches that I first started like kind of gravitating towards outside of like Rob, who was easy to gravitate towards right now.
Yeah.
Same.
Super nice, open, friendly dude.
What was really cool about, and it's funny because it kind of goes like against what Alex was saying. I love the fact that you were doing different stuff.
Yeah.
And you would like sit there and I remember like one of the things I thought you were really, really great at was you could kind of see what I was doing wrong and knew that I wanted to be pushed, but you didn't do it in a way that made it feel like I couldn't do it. And I kind of feel like that where we're akin in that same sort of thing is that where after hearing that story is that, when I was diagnosed, it was, they tell you what standard of care is.
Yeah.
And I think you and I even talked about it back then. I was like, because I just started scratching the surface of, I think diet is the key.
Ketogenic stuff.
Yeah. And I was like talking about like all that stuff. And I started diving down that whole route. And I kind of went against the grain of what people said was this is what you're supposed to do. Yeah. And I think that's where ultimately like you and I kind of really like had really deep conversations about that kind of stuff. And where like when we reconnected here, I was really excited to talk with you is because, it's like, I do see a lot of when I was your age, I didn't have that. Let me rephrase. I wanted to do that.
Yeah.
I didn't have the bravery to do that.
Yeah.
And I think that, in that process, what's interesting is like, how much do you think in the discovery of like, as you start digging down this route of medicine, like we talked about, you're going into that world of, medicine's a big umbrella. There's a bunch of different definitions of it, but how much do you think, because I believe, truthfully, I'm involved in like on the cancer committee, NRG, it's a national thing, and I'm on the board. I'm the brain tumor patient advocate, and I'm in the room with these amazing doctors that are, and what's interesting is it's a broad spectrum. So you have the doctors that are older, and then you have the young docs. Yeah. And the breadth of conversation is so much different.
Yeah.
How much do you think in the future of medicine the young minds that are willing to do exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah.
That think like, well, maybe. And I want to add a second layer to it is how much do you think that this is a sticky situation, I guess, but like how much do you think like big pharma and all that shit plays into that world of people advocating for themselves? Like, I guess that's a multi-layered question, but like I really truly believe that there's if a lot of old minds move out of the way and accept some of the young thinking, just because you guys are young doesn't mean that you don't get right. I think you guys are way more connected with who you are than what people my age are.
Yeah, I mean, like, I just think it's like such a good question because, I just feel like I want to answer the question like right, but like it's when you say things like our generation is just almost in a way like somewhat like better at being a daredevil, so per se, like or pushing boundaries. I don't think it's a quality that say the young docs. I guess I'll answer your first question. Like, first of all, are you saying that the breadth of conversation or the breadth or just the deepness, the depth, the consideration of the new doctors seems to be a little bit more profound? Like they're more open?
Yeah, 100%.
And then the older ones are kind of fixed. And
they're like, this is how it goes. This is step one is this, step two is this. And it's been passed down through the generational kind of thing.
Yeah, I think there's a saying, I forget how it goes, but it's kind of like if you have an old king, I think it's a king, I think that's the story, but when the old king doesn't, pass on his role to the new king or to the younger prince that's becoming the king, and he holds on to his power like too long, you get a lot of chaos and atrophy, and you get a lot of rotting, you get a lot of fermentation, you get a lot of destruction. It's like when you hold a natural process back, like when do you ever see a good result from that?
Right.
So I know it's a leap to take. Consideration, being open-mindedness, it takes a lot of energy, and it especially takes a lot of energy because what you're basically saying is like, are you sure you're not wrong?
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah,
are you sure after all these years of being a physician and having the MD next to your name and, making the money and having the Mercedes, like, and being the important person you are you sure you're not wrong?
Right.
And the answer is just like human nature. Like they're just going to be so less inclined to consider new perspective because it threatens what they know fundamentally deep down. If you take 15 seconds to consider any decision you've ever made in your life or every protocol you've ever done. I've never done a protocol in my life except for like seeing the sunrise or something where I'm like, I thought that was way better than it actually is.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Even working out, like I me doing it for the reasons I was doing it, and looking back in my career per se, like I have not looked back on anything where, other than kindness and, being respectful of people and empathetic and just like the normal things that just, prolong happiness with, human nature per se. But anything that's more like personally guided, like ego driven or protective, it never ends that well.
Right.
Right. And so I think the newer generations are a little bit more open to change because they get bored easily. Like I don't think it's a trait of being better or nicer.
Yep.
It's not like we grew up with phones and technology, and you ever talk to a kid that's, between the ages of 11 and 16, you'll look at you for like 5 seconds and then it's like, okay, dude, like I'm done with you. Like, where's the next thing? And I think if you can somehow harness that diversity or that what you call like ADHD into something that is like, the quality of being able to laterally think within a topic like medicine, you're going to get a lot more efficacy in research, and you're also going to get better conversations, which just leads to better outcomes.
Yeah.
When it comes to something, what was your second question? I've already rambled.
Well, I think the second part is like just how I think you guys have like your generation, the younger generation, especially you talk to younger kids too. Like even like you're talking about that 11 to 16 year old. I've made the argument with in the group that I work on with that how much the older generation, it sounds so bad like I'm aging everybody, but
Yeah.
you kind of just to draw perspective, right?
Yeah, just
Is that
because you're not saying they're wiser.
No.
Which is like new.
Right. I'm just talking a way of thinking, so to speak, where it's like a doctor will, like, for example, I'll use my doctors because it's easier. I can tell my first doc said I'd be dead in 7 months.
Yeah, I remember you telling me that.
I fired him immediately. Okay.
Yeah.
Second doc comes in, who is older, and he says, well, it's not one size fits all. And I think your case is different. Okay. Two different ways of saying the same information.
They could have thought the same thing.
Should have thought the same thing. Could have
Yeah.
looked at the same facts.
Yeah.
But the thing that I find really, really compelling about the younger generation of doctors, and I purposely got a new general med doctor. I picked somebody that was just out of school for a reason. Because what I find refreshing is that younger doctors always ask the patients what they want to do first.
Okay.
Instead of it going through a playbook. And
Right.
what I love about that, and too, because you can imagine me, dude, I came in with this guy like, all right, man, you ready to get hit with what you're about to get hit with? Because I'm like, I'm not going to take this stuff. I'm not going to take that stuff. This is how I do. This is this and this. And it was the first time I had a doctor go like, awesome. Like, thanks for bringing all this stuff. And he's like, hey, can I get a copy of this? Because I want to like look into it for my own life. And I think that's when I talk about that, like where do you think that stems from in that young-minded medicine? And how do you balance that between that bridge of, like you said, not getting a threat to a doctor says like, hey, you're old, you don't get it. Like,
you're saying like, how do you communicate to, or I guess it's like, how do you communicate to an older person that you want them to be more open?
Yeah, so sort of. I mean, if you look at...
What was the first question that you were
So, like,
there?
I guess I'd love to hear your perspective on how, like, is it a natural thing that you think has just happened with younger people to be more mindful of who you are?
I think I get what you're saying.
Yeah.
I think...
The human element, so to speak, yeah.
Yeah, I think... I hate to say it, but, like, I think if you want to find out the truth and stuff, if you want to be as smart as you can be, you simultaneously have to be as nice as you can be. Like, you can't learn as much if you're not considerate.
Yeah.
You have to consider... You have to be a kind person to learn the most. You can learn a lot by being, not a very encouraging and nice and open person. There's tons of people that do that, and I would just say like they would make, perhaps great researchers, or they might make great analysts. But when you're in patient care and you're someone that's dealing with life and death situations or just acute traumas, and I need my appendix out, or I'm having a baby and I want to do it the most natural way, or I have a GBM or something like that, someone who is nice is going to consider you as a person first. They're going to see your case, and they're going to look at your notes and be like, clearly you know a lot more about your situation than I do. I might know more about, the ins and outs of medicine, but without me combining what I know with you combining what you know, we're going to get a very mediocre result, and it's probably going to not really affect me as a doctor. I might actually make more money if you suffer.
Yes.
But I think the newer generations are a little bit more diverse. They're not as myopic in their view of, before maybe the standardized care is, especially in the Western world, like the U.S., it's the incentives are, my job is to perform X.
Yeah.
It's not to, now the job is per se more about being a social worker combined with a scientist combined with a psychologist, clinician. Like the best guys are, and even aware of, natural phenomenon like nature and stuff. It sounds ridiculous. Like how wouldn't a physician be hip to things like, electromagnetism, and, so much about medicine, and so much about what you learn in the books, but you don't know about, the simple like resonance of, natural phenomena in the environment, which I think for me, if I were to continue the question and say like, okay, well then what is your ideal physician?
Yeah.
It would be, and something I aspire to be perhaps one day is someone that really understands how their environment affects their health. Not everyone can separate themselves and move to El Salvador and live under the super nice UV sun and have a great, have their feet on the ground all the time. Like, I get that, that's just unrealistic. But then how can I understand each mechanism that makes the modern environment, a sick producing environment, and be like, so instead of doing X, you should do, like tweaking that stuff first.
Yeah.
Because it's like, if I don't know your environment, then how can I treat you?
Yeah.
So if I'm going to go to a doctor and they don't consider an environmental thing, like, phone or house, or, how much sun do you get, or, what water do you drink, or, like food is down the line.
Yeah.
In my opinion. So, first, be kind. Second, be understanding of natural phenomena, like mammals in general, like animals, humans, like we're all mammals, like, mammals specifically. But, and then go into the literature that you learned in med school and apply that to an overall system. Most of the time, you probably won't even see a need to intervene with the stuff you learned in med school. But unfortunately, the insurance companies don't like that, and the pharma companies don't like that, and you don't get paid a lot unless you're a decentralized physician operating in your own practice, which means out of pocket usually for the for the consumer or the client or the patient, and it's a whole different game.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of different conversations around it, but it's a good question you ask, because there are differences.
Yeah, you said a couple of things in there that to kind of circling back and pull some stuff out of there, that for people that are out there that are dealing with real stuff, when they're going to a doctor, you get frustrated, stuff like that.
Yeah.
And I'll say, one of the things you said, and I used that exact phrase, is when I meet new doctors now, I make it very clear that there's only room for one captain on this team. But my job is to bring the best me to meet the best knowledge they have.
Yeah.
Combined with the best science that's out there to create what we will, as a team, make something that somebody said was impossible possible.
Yeah.
And I think that a lot of people don't realize that the power that they have to control that stuff, because I think a lot of us, we've been programmed by a lot of the doctors that just because they went to the school, they know all the ins and outs. And all
I'm ruthless with physicians.
And it's like, I guess the reason why I want to bring that up is just like, for anybody listening that the question, and I'll tell you about this, that blows my mind more than anything that people say to me is like, how did you think to stand up to your first doctor in the way you did? Because I fired him before I even left the room. It was like, and that baffles me more than anything, because it didn't even cross my mind to consider them after they said that. It was just, and I don't know what that is, but that made that happen, other than, much like you, when I was younger, I was the defiant kid. I was the like, you're going to tell me I can't? Okay, sure, watch.
Yeah.
And I think that kind of played off onto that part for me. But
to the bettering or to the detriment of your,
right.
Like, it was just like, the simple resistance was like, whether, that's like the thing where it's like, don't touch that hot flame. And it's like, I like the color of it and I want to touch it. And it's like, you touch it and you get hurt. And they're like, see? You're like, well, I didn't care. I knew I was probably going to get hurt, but I wanted to feel it.
Yeah.
So I know.
Yeah.
So I know now. It's just like, I get what you're saying. But you going to continue with that.
Yeah, no, I kind of wanted to full circle, because we're actually kind of running out of time here. But like, I wanted to like kind of loop it all back around and just ask, like, kind of reflecting back on the beginning, where are you at now? And knowing what you're getting ready to go into, we talked about you're getting ready to med school and you're doing all the cool stuff to do this and all the things that the paths you went down. What do you think would happen if you can go back in time and sit with Sam that was sitting there going like, shit, I just ripped my shoulder again, and what do you think that he would say to you in return of where you're at now?
Hang up the skates.
Yeah.
I would, that's the thing I always look back on, is like, I was getting these signs from my environment, from the universe, from God, however you want to look at it. And I had come into a place where my energy expended was not even close to being coordinated with my energy, received. My results weren't matching my output. And whenever that's happening, there's a deficiency somewhere, right? Like in anywhere, it's like if I'm doing a lot of work for something and I'm not getting a lot of return, should I work harder? Sometimes within a certain context, but like you're young and you got a new job and you're getting paid minimum wage and you're like, man, I literally have to do this stupidest stuff for the least amount of money and I just should be an influencer or something. It's like, I'm not talking about that kind of thing. I'm talking about like these real signs of like, okay, I'm pretty good at what I do, but for some reason, like I'm working really hard and I'm doing all the right things and I'm getting terrible results, like not even close to like what I think I should be doing. And I'm looking around my peers and my other teammates and I'm like, they're really not doing that much, but they seem to be progressing.
Yeah.
So I think it was just a lesson for me to be like, no matter what you want or think you want in your life, like if I look at myself now, the wisdom piece of it is like, I don't really know what I still want. And people will try to tell you to find out what you want and what your passion is. Your passion is, I think, usually sequestered into whoever you came into the world as. Like, and our ability to reconnect to that will probably, help us and direct us into the proper path. But like, I resisted it to the point where I needed 3 different shoulder surgeries, a face surgery, so much pain, so much rehab, so much, and never once that I was just like, hey man, like I could probably make it further, but like, what else in life is there, sort of thing?
Yeah.
And if I would have come to that conclusion to accept fate a little bit easier, given all of the signs, it's just, dude, don't wait so long to switch your lifestyle if things just intuitively aren't, working out.
Yeah.
So that was probably what I would say is don't be afraid to shift, even when like all the things say like, dude, you've put all this time, money, energy into something. Like sometimes it's just easier to burn it all down and start again.
Yeah, man. Well, that is a perfect. I mean, the time flew by. I just look at the clock and I'm like, holy crap! Like we're
done.
Yeah, we're done. But man, guys, I just, as you like hear the stories, I just really, the goal of like the Beyond Hope Project podcast is always just to draw light where people can kind of hear themselves in our stories. Yeah. And I think that what I would encourage you all to do is like you're hearing Sam's story. You're understanding that you're not alone. Like we all are having those moments, just like he just explained in such a great way, where we know that like our energy out in return it's lacking, and we want to make a shift. We're too afraid to because it's unknown. But there's a lot of magic that happens in the unknown, and that's where hope shows up. But the thing is about hope is that it'll do nothing for you if you don't take that first step. It'll do amazing stuff for you, but you got to be brave enough to step into it. So I will make sure that all of Sam's info is linked into the show notes, and you can go find this young man and follow along his journey as he steps into what I'm positive is going to be changing a lot of stuff in the world for the better for a lot of people. And I look forward to keeping in touch with you and rooting you on. And I hope you know that if you ever need anything from me, I got your back, dude. And happy to help in any way I can. So
super grateful to be on. This is awesome. Such a cool thing you're doing here. Yeah. And I appreciate your time to connect today.
All right, right on, man. Well, guys, we hope it's helped. And make sure that if you know 2 people that know 2 people, pass this on, share this. This is how we start this revolution of hope. It doesn't just start by me just talking into a mic and you listening and not taking action. We need you to share it too and help us wake people up to what's the magic of their life. And we'll talk to you there. See ya.
Foxland Media. Think big.